I'm Joe LeFavi, and I'm a producer and brand manager on the Walking Dead universe role-playing game.
Hello, I'm Mattias Johnsson Haake from Free League, and I am one of two game directors for the Walking Dead universe role-playing game, working closely together with Joe to bring this to life.
So can you folks talk about how this collaboration and this game came about? Like how come it's taken this long to officially license Walking Dead tabletop RPG?
I run a company called Genuine Entertainment, and it's kind of like a geek consigliere in pop culture, and I work with it's a pretty fun way to make a living. And so I work with a lot of these kinds of entertainment brands in film and TV and video games to help them to figure out what to do with their IP, if it should be growing into multiple forms of media, or just what are the most organic or authentic ways to extend their IP. And we had been talking about tabletop RPGs for a long time for AMC, and just studying what was happening. And I'd worked with Free League on a number of RPGs in the past, like Alien and Blade Runner. And it just, as soon as the topic came to mind, a lot of the people at AMC are actually gamers. They are actually people who are like rolling dice and spending 100 hours in Elden Ring, and like they know this world. They just never really had the opportunity to do it in a safe space with, somebody that they can make it the right way. And so when Free League expressed like real passion to do this kind of game, it just made sense that we didn't have to make it a licensed thing. It was a co-production. We can spend as much time as we needed to make it to feel organic, to make it feel canonical, to time it correctly. It really was kind of a kismet, all stars aligning kind of thing where, just a bunch of friends talking about wouldn't it be cool, and suddenly there was an agreement in place. It was it doesn't always happen like that, but I'm lucky that's how it happened this time.
I am so super happy to be able to be part of this. I'm a long-standing fan of the TV series, and I've actually thought a number of times that it would do very good as a basis for a role-playing game, a role-playing game that is geared more towards drama maybe than action and heroism. And also we have the super talented Nils Hintze as the lead game designer for this game. He has also developed our Tales from the Loop role-playing game and Väsen, the role-playing game. And he's also a even more big fan than I am of the Walking Dead. So yeah, as Joe said, everything fell into place quite easily.
Yeah, once I heard that Nils was like a super fan, I'm like, oh, I got this. It was just, like I am obsessed with Tales from the Loop. It's how we started working together with Free League, that I had read it eons ago. Flew to Gen Con and basically violently shook Thomas, the CEO of Free League. Was like,
you got the double hand thing going on. You're like, hello, nice to meet you, sir. Nice to meet you.
I'm like, what do you need? How can we work together? Oh my God, this is brilliant. And so I have always wanted to work with them. And as soon as I'm like, hey, what about the Roleplaying game? And Nils was the super fan. And like, all right. It was one of those like knuckle cracking moments of like, oh, this is gonna be good. So yeah, I'm lucky.
Mattias, can you expand on this Walking Dead RPG and how you design systems for it? You guys have done the Alien. I played the Alien game from Free League. I know that's a D6 system. Like, how do you figure out which system is going to be correct for the world, and whether it's D20, D6, or some other proprietary system that you guys want? Like, how do you work that out?
No, that decision, the decision to use the Year Zero engine was made by Nils Hintze, and we support it fully because as it turns out, it works really well. So, for instance, you will see some similarities with the Alien mechanics in that we have sort of borrowed the core aspects of the stress mechanic from the Alien RPG. But it is used and implemented in a bit of a different way that I know that Joe really loves. We use it in this case to sort of tie the experience of the player characters their progression through the story to the setting and its development at large. So basically, when the player characters push a lot of roles, and when they take a lot of risks, the environment around them tend to get more, or it will get more and more threatening. Let's put it at that. We have a system called the threat level that sort of mirrors the and I love hearing Joe talk about this. So maybe, what is the threat level, Joe?
Sure. So yes, I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with the mechanic a bit. That I love the stress mechanic and what we did with Alien, and then we kind of took that in a new direction with how you track humanity in Blade Runner. But that's all very personal. It's all just the choices you make and the impact it has on you. And
right. Your stress.
Yeah. This is taking it to a whole new level where it's not just about you. You have anchors that are other characters, PCs and NPCs, that you also have to maintain, that you also have to protect, that if you get in a fight, if they're in a bad mood, if they're stressed, you're stressed. And every decision that you make, every decision that they make, the world actually responds in a way where you can't just have a fight. You can't just blindly charge into an area. You can't just raise your voice and lose your temper, because walkers will come, because threats will rise and things will escalate and continue to escalate. If you see and you played Alien, you know that stakes can escalate. Somebody's gonna go Hudson eventually. You know, it's like
game over, man. Game over. Yeah.
So just imagine what that's like in The Walking Dead, where it's not just Hudson going game over. You're literally gonna just call a massive cataclysmic event because one person just can't keep their shit together. And so it's something that I've never seen this level of stress before, where every single person's decision impacts every other single person's decisions in a way that is kind of addictive.
I can see that around the table. Dude, stop! Like, stop!
Yeah. But there's that one person that's always like, "I'm not gonna stop.
We're gonna die." No, dude, stop! You're freaking everyone out.
No, but the pretty cool. The cool thing about this, if I'm allowed to interject, is
go.
It becomes a tactical aspect of the game as well, because. As Joe said, you won't charge blindly into a situation guns blazing, because walkers will hear it and they will start, closing in. But it's also very simple and basic die rolls that you will make in like problem-solving situations or exploration and whatnot, where you really need to think twice before you decide to take the chance to make those rolls. Because if you are stressed going into that situation, there is a risk that you will slip up, that you will, I don't know, stumble over a log and just make a lot of noise, and walkers will notice or whatever. So it becomes a game where you as a group really need to decide what challenges to take on, what challenges you need to deal with in an active manner. And sometimes, and I love this in a game, I work very much with Symbaroum, and I'm a fan of games that actually, the smart thing at times is to turn and run.
Yeah, fight or flight. Yeah, it's a big thing.
Yeah. And I feel like that's a notion that wouldn't have made sense, I think, to gamers until a lot of these survival games have come into play, where I've invested hundreds of hours into The Long Dark, and it's one of those things that all I want to do is get to the next day. And I want to sew for 4 hours and make my deer jacket so that I don't freeze to death, because consequence exists in this world. And the contract of gamers going, yes, consequences are bad, we can die, I think the idea of loss in gaming in a personal, social, psychological way, when The Walking Dead started 20 plus seasons ago, I don't know if that was something that people would have really embraced, but I think that now gamers and fans are at a point where they're watching The Walking Dead, they're watching The Last of Us, they're playing, DayZ and The Long Dark. They're playing Valheim. Like, I think I think gamers were ready to take this kind of game seriously and not make it just about stabbing walkers. Like I think that they're going to play the right version of this game now because of just where gaming is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It makes sense. Now, my next question, and don't misconstrue this, but like Kickstarter is a great tool, but like Free League, like Mattias, your company's done great stuff with like Mutant Year Zero and Alien and Lord of the Rings and Blade Runner. These are huge IPs. And you keep doing Kickstarters. Is there a reason specifically for that? I mean, why you're not just getting self-funded out of the gate by, AMC, or is this, because I know sometimes Kickstarters can be like a reference to to gauge interest for a major company before they invest. Sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it can just be a metric like that. But like, why do you guys keep doing Kickstarter particularly, rather than just publishing, here it comes out this month or whatnot?
Over the years, we have made 30 plus Kickstarters. Mm-hmm. Especially if you count, we are basically two teams that merged into Free League, and between us we have done a lot of successful Kickstarters. And what we found and learn, and it's confirmed with every Kickstarter we do, is that it's a super good marketing tool. Even if the brand is really huge, such in the case of the Walking Dead universe or Alien, role-playing games are not that huge. I mean, there are some household names.
There's two big household names we won't mention here, but there's bigger ones, and then there's smaller, more niche ones. Yes.
So and we have over these years also built up a very loyal and supportive crowd of Kickstarter contacts. So for us, Kickstarter has been, and we have used, I think we have used at least Indiegogo one time as well, but crowdfunding as a principle has been super important for us to even build a company. And every time we release a game, we raise the question, and if the question with the licensor, right?
The IP holder.
If Kickstarter is an option, and if it is, we tend to use that tool to get a good start for the game. So it's not more complicated than that. Maybe Joe has some other input here.
For me, it's common sense. Is that the larger the brand is, the more fans that there are, and you would think that would be a strength, but it's actually a challenge, because in order to filter all of those fans out, to specifically find the ones that want to do this very specific thing, is incredibly hard, particularly for an analog product put in a brick and mortar industry that isn't necessarily digital, that isn't
in a digital age.
It is actually really, really hard to find a tabletop RPG fan for an IP that is that big, particularly when you Google the word Alien or Blade Runner or The Walking Dead, and a million things come up. Right. How do you find the person who would care the most about this very specific thing? Kickstarter is like this laser scope onto this very particular kind of fan, and it just gets better every single year. I mean, tabletop is over a third of all the money it makes every year. Like, it is like tabletop's Comic-Con that happens to just be a storefront to sell these things to the people who love them the most. And so it really is one of the best ways to find the super fans for this very particular kind of content, because this is where they are the most. It would be like, asking, why is a film applying for an Oscar award? It's like, because that's kind of the point.
If I may, there is also, and this must must be stressed. There are, I mean, producing a new role-playing game from scratch, a core book, in this case, with the Kickstarter will feature a starter set as well. It is a cost in it. And we have, over the years, used Kickstarter as a platform for funding that little extra that backers maybe, or players, gamers maybe want, but that we don't feel are 100% necessary for the game to work. So with the stretch goal system in the Kickstarter, it is definitely the case that having a huge success on Kickstarter does make the game better. In the sense that we have the possibility to add pages to the books, even add other types of game aids or supplements, or even in the past adventures and whatnot, to the base, what becomes the base of the new role-playing game,
the foundation.
Yeah. So I mean, you can talk how much, I mean, we are pretty sure that we will get funded when we start a new Kickstarter project, thanks to our fantastic supporters out there, but it is no joke that depending on how well the Kickstarter goes, it will impact that foundation that we will then launch 6 or 8 months later in stores.
Yeah, I mean, what we saw on Blade Runner was crazy. Like, when word first went out on Blade Runner, there were some realtors like, my God, that sounds amazing, but how big is the demand for Blade Runner? Where's your market?
Show me your market research. Is this really a thing that could sell in my store for $100?
Exactly. And then we raised $1 million in 24 hours, and they're like, oh. It's really, it's become a very effective tool to show that brands matter to this community in a way that you just can't prove any other way.
And then Joe, because I have you here, I'm just curious about the process. Like, how does it start with because the IP Walking Dead, huge IP, like, does that start with a phone call? Does that start with an email? Like, where does that even start? Because I doubt you just call up Kirkman and pitch it to him and he gives you the thumbs up, Like, how does that process work? It doesn't have to be for the Walking Dead, it could be in general too.
Yeah, it's 9 times out of 10 on all of the licensed tabletop games and RPGs that I've done, it's a safe space with me and like 2-3 key stakeholders of the IP going, would it be awesome if we did this? Like, why haven't we done this yet? And I go, well, you could. Here's how it could work. And it's usually, a tabletop RPG, I've been fortunate enough where, like, these kinds of things, they're such an authentic expression of what the IP is. It's never a forced thing. It's never just a licensed cash grab. Like, when you go, oh, The Walking Dead as a sandbox, I get it. It's not something you have to sell anybody on. And you could point to a market, you can point to D&D doing how well it's doing these days, or the god-awful number of awards that Free League has, and you go, look, you're in a safe space. You can actually do this in a way that the fans will thank you for it if you give us a chance to make the best version of this thing. And I think that's honestly the key to it all. Like, I think a lot of these licensed RPGs don't happen because the proposition a lot of these IP get is, here's the deal memo, here's the numbers, here's your minimum guarantee. They're not hearing, let's make the very best version of this thing with the very best partner out there. I think coming from it as a labor of love and a passion project first, and then letting the business take care of itself you would be surprised how that's more of the exception to the rule a lot of times.
Mattias, what's the biggest thing you learned from your past or tabletop RPGs, whether it be Blade Runner, Alien, or whatever, that you've applied to The Walking Dead specifically? Like, what a big lesson you learned from one of those games?
Yeah, sorry, you're asking the wrong guy on this, because I I am that guy at Free League that normally works on our own IPs, the ones that we own. I
Right.
work on Motus Symbaroum and Coriolis and Forbidden Lands and Drakar, also Dragonbane, that is coming out now in a while. It just so happens that I was happy to make an exception in this case because I am so much a fan of The Walking Dead as a setting or a medium for talking about interesting things and telling interesting stories that really matter. So I haven't had a chance. I'm learning on the job right now. This is the first time I'm been this involved in. I mean, we're a small studio and we tend to dip our toes in every project we do, all of us. But this is the first time I'm this involved in a project that is tied to such a big brand.
And the last question I have for both of you is that, I know you're obviously Free League is a publishing house, but like, any chance you guys might get into the miniature market at all? Custom dice or minis for multiple games, whether licensed or your original IP? Like, have you guys considered that on your end? Talked about it?
Talked, yes. Then again,
Yes.
we are a group of guys who apparently knows how to make an RPG that people like to play. And it just so happens also that we really enjoy making those games. So, well, why we have dabbled a little bit with skirmish games, as you may know, the Zone Wars for Mutant Year Zero, and also board games for Tales from the Loop, and collaboration with Paradox and Crusader Kings. So we're doing, and you will see some other announcements coming up in the next year that has to do with collaborations with others. But for the team or the studio of Free League Publishing, we will devote almost all our time to making role-playing games and supplements for those games. So.
And real fast, just for Joe, is that kind of wrapped into negotiations? Do people expect a miniature market with the tabletop RPG in your case, or most of the times it's a separate licensing? That's merchandise, and that's a different department.
No, it's something that we can usually do. It just doesn't make sense for the actual game that we're making in the play style. I mean, particularly when you have something like Free League, you've played their games, so they're very much a theater of the mind kind of game.
Yeah, we never used miniatures when we played Alien. It was always just like old school.
Yeah, and so it's something that the more you make that tangible and physical on the board, the more it kind of pulls you out of how the game was intended to be played. Like, will I take 100 miniatures for like a Dune strategy board game? Hell yeah. Because that's what I want. I want to move that ornithopter over to the deep desert, and I want me some spice. But when it comes to these kinds of games, like, I love miniatures. I'm a hobbyist. I mean, clearly I like my stuff. Right. But it is something where, it has to be an additive to how the experience was intended, rather than just making plastics for stretch goals. Like, I think that it has to make sense in order for that to really be more than just an optional accessory, which pains me to say, because if I had miniatures for all of my RPGs, I would love them. Right. It kind of hurts me inside that I'm saying this answer, because I'm fighting against my own hobby, but so it is. So it goes.